Hello everyone, and welcome to this video podcast on the last days. My name is David, and the title of this episode is Enoch's Prophetic Timeline of the Last Days, Part 2, with a subtitle of Tribulations, Tribulations, and More Tribulations. This is episode 25. We will begin this episode by first referring to four overarching visions which were given to Enoch to help educate and prepare him for what the Lord had in store for him in his day, a day of wickedness and vengeance. In fact, the wickedness and vengeance was so great that the Lord would later declare to Enoch that, among all the workmanship of mine hands, there has not been so great wickedness as among thy brethren. What sort of visions, then, would the Lord give to Enoch in order to give him the eternal perspective needed for him to bear up under the enormous evil of his day and the great tribulations that were to come? Let's make special mention, then, of four of these overarching visions given to Enoch. The first overarching vision I would like to make mention of is Enoch's vision of the spirits in the spirit world. In Moses chapter 6, verses 35 through 38, we read, And the Lord spake unto Enoch, and said unto him, Anoint thine eyes with clay, and wash them, and thou shalt see. And he did so, and he beheld the spirits that God had created, and he beheld also things which were not visible to the natural eye. And from thenceforth came the saying abroad in the land, A seer hath the Lord raised up unto his people. This leads me then to another vision that Enoch received of Satan and his angels rejoicing. For we read in Moses 6:26 the following, And he beheld Satan, and he had a great chain in his hand, and it veiled the whole face of the earth with darkness. And he looked up and laughed, and his angels rejoiced. Now what sort of depraved and hellish fiends are these, who laugh and rejoice at the death, destruction, and wickedness of those who lived in the days of Enoch, and who were to be swept off the earth in the floods in the days of Noah? And furthermore, why was it important for Enoch to know that such dark, depraved, and powerful demons existed? Well, I believe there are two lessons taught here. First, it was important for Enoch to know what the Apostle Paul knew, and that is this, as recorded in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, which reads, For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. And secondly, I believe it was important for Enoch to know what the Book of Mormon prophet Lehi knew about the motivation underlying the power and captivity of the devil and his angels, as recorded in 2 Nephi chapter 2, verse 27, and which reads, For he seeketh that all men might be miserable like unto himself. Now in contrast to a vision of Satan and his devilish fiends laughing and rejoicing over the destruction of the wicked, consider what comes next, wherein Enoch is given a vision of both God and the heavens weeping over this same destruction. In Moses chapter 7, verses 28 and 29, we read, And it came to pass that the God of heaven looked upon the residue of the people, and he wept. And Enoch bore record of it, saying, How is it that the heavens weep, and shed forth their tears as the rain upon the mountains? And Enoch said unto the Lord, How is it that thou canst weep, seeing thou art holy, and from all eternity to all eternity? A God that weeps stands in stark contrast to a God without body parts or passions. And even Enoch was dumbfounded by such a vision. For here we have an infinite God with infinite creations, who, thought Enoch, should be infinitely removed from anything that takes place outside his heavenly realm of everlasting happiness and a fullness of joy. The Lord, however, responds to Enoch in these words, and is recorded in Moses chapter 7, verses 33 through 37, which reads, The Lord said unto Enoch, Behold these thy brethren, they are the workmanship of mine own hands. But behold, they are without affection, and they hate their own blood. And in my hot displeasure will I send in the floods upon them, for my fierce anger is kindled against them. And among all the workmanship of mine hands, there has not been so great wickedness as among thy brethren. Satan shall be their father, and misery shall be their doom. And the whole heavens shall weep over them, even all the workmanship of mine hands. Wherefore should not the heavens weep, seeing these thy brethren shall suffer? The message to Enoch seems to be that we are not talking about the misery and doom of some distant and foreign creature, but of the misery and doom of thy brethren, which brings to mind the vision that Enoch had earlier of the spirits in the spirit world. In other words, these are thy spirit brothers and sisters. Wherefore should not the heavens weep, seeing these thy brethren should suffer? In short, we are talking about family here, the family of God. And whenever a son or daughter of God is lost, or doomed to eternal misery, it is a horrific family tragedy. And the bidding of an everlasting farewell to a once beloved family member is more than reason enough for the heavens to be weeping. For we are told that all of eternity shook at the thought. Consider this further explanation is found in Moses chapter 7, verses 40 and 41, which reads, Wherefore, for this shall the heavens weep, yea, and all the workmanship of mine hands. And it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Enoch, and told Enoch all the doings of the children of men. Wherefore Enoch knew, and looked upon their wickedness, and their misery, and wept, and stretched forth his arms, and his heart swelled wide as eternity, and his bowels yearned, and all eternity shook. Now let's turn to the last of these four overarching visions, wherein Enoch is shown a most unusual and remarkable vision of the earth in mourning over the wickedness which resides on its face. In Moses chapter 7, verses 48 and 49, we read the following. And it came to pass that Enoch looked upon the earth, and he heard a voice from the bowels thereof, saying, Woe, woe is me, the mother of men! I am pained, I am weary, because of the wickedness of my children. When shall I rest, and be cleansed from the filthiness which is gone forth out of me? When will my Creator sanctify me, that I may rest, and righteousness for a season abide upon my face? And when Enoch heard the earth mourn, he wept, and cried unto the Lord, saying, O Lord, wilt thou not have compassion upon the earth? The Lord does not give Enoch a direct answer, and so we read the following some 10 verses later. And again Enoch wept, and cried unto the Lord, saying, When shall the earth rest? Finally, the Lord does give Enoch an answer, that the earth shall rest in the latter days, but not before there shall be great darkness and tribulations among the children of men. For in Moses chapter 7, verses 61 and 64, we read the following. And the day shall come that the earth shall rest, but before that day the heavens shall be darkened, and a veil of darkness shall cover the earth, and the heavens shall shake, and also the earth, and great tribulation shall be among the children of men. But my people will I preserve, and for a space of 1,000 years the earth shall rest. To put these four overarching visions of Enoch in the book of Moses into the proper perspective, consider these words of Terrell and Fiona Givens as quoted by Bradshaw and Larson in part 1 of their article of The Interpreter, and under the heading of Introduction to the LDS Enoch Revelations, and which reads, both in the expansive nature of its content and the eloquence of its expression. Terrell and Fiona Givens consider the LDS account of Enoch as perhaps the most remarkable religious document published in the 19th century. It was produced early in Joseph Smith's ministry, In fact, in the same year as the publication of the Book of Mormon, as part of a divine commission to retranslate the Bible. Writing the account of Enoch occupied a part of the prophet's attention for a month from 30 November to 31 December 1830. Later, the first 8 chapters of the Joseph Smith translation of Genesis, which included 2 chapters on Enoch, were separately canonized as the Book of Moses. Now, with those 4 overarching visions behind us, let me turn to another observation that I began emphasizing in the last few episodes and want to continue emphasizing in coming episodes as well. And that is the importance of incorporating both gospel themes and prophetic themes together whenever possible. For I believe it makes our presentations far more interesting, relevant, and powerful than any one of these themes by themselves. For instance, it was said of the ancient patriarchs, including and perhaps especially Enoch, that they were preachers of righteousness and spake and prophesied. Notice the dual role or capacity that these ancient preachers of righteousness performed. We have first, then, preaching with its numerous gospel themes, followed by prophesying with its various prophetic themes. As to the preaching, consider these words of Adam as Enoch read them from the book of remembrance kept by Adam, and is found in Moses chapter 6, verse 62, which reads, "And now behold, I say unto you, this is the plan of salvation unto all men, through the blood of mine only begotten, who shall come in the meridian of time." Adam then had the plan of salvation, and it was this plan of salvation, with all its numerous gospel themes, that was taught by all these ancient preachers of righteousness in Adam's, Enoch's, and Noah's day. Now as to the prophesying, consider these words about Enoch as found in Moses chapter 7, verse 65, and which reads, "And it came to pass that Enoch saw the day of the coming of the Son of Man in the last days, to dwell on the earth in righteousness for the space of 1,000 years." We see then that Enoch prophesied of the coming of the Lord in the last days. And so you see the dual role that these ancient preachers of righteousness play of both preaching and prophesying. It is also interesting to note that Enoch gives credit to his father, Jared, for teaching him this plan of salvation, along with all the gospel themes associated with it. For he writes, "And my father taught me in all the ways of God." Another interesting note can be added, for when Enoch had finished reading Adam's words from the book of remembrance, he took up the prophetic mantle and began to prophesy among the people as well. For it is written that, "And from that time forth Enoch began to prophesy." And finally, as to the extent of this prophesying, we are told that Enoch had been shown all things even unto the end of the world. And so we see this preaching and prophesying going hand in hand, for there is no way Enoch could have established the city of Enoch in his day without the gospel themes and prophetic themes complementing and supplementing one another. After all, these gospel themes were centered in the coming of the Lord in the meridian of time, as well as Christ returning again in these last days, both of which were thousands of years in the future, making it virtually impossible for Enoch to preach of Christ without also prophesying of Christ. In any event, what I would like to do now is to show you the extent of Enoch's preaching in this episode before I show you the extent of his prophesying in the next episode. This is going to be somewhat of a lightning round, for what I would like to do is just show you the extent of Enoch's understanding of the plan of salvation in his day, by rattling off 10 prominent themes that pertain to the plan of salvation as taught in our day, beginning with Enoch's vision of the spirit world, as mentioned previously, and as recorded in Moses chapter 6, verses 35 and 36, which reads, And the Lord spake unto Enoch, and said unto him, Anoint thine eyes with clay, and wash them, and thou shalt see. And he did so. And he beheld the spirits that God had created, and he beheld also things which were not visible to the natural eye. And from thenceforth came the saying abroad in the land, A seer hath the Lord raised up unto his people. Now as I read off these 10 prominent themes, pay attention to the additional scriptural references which fall below each theme as well, in order to get an idea of just how much this or that theme is referred to in these writings about Enoch. Next we have Enoch's understanding of the creation, as recorded in Moses chapter 6 verse 51 and chapter 7 verse 30, which reads, And he called upon our father Adam by his own voice, saying, I am God. I made the world, and men before they were in the flesh. And were it possible that man could number the particles of the earth, yea, millions of earths like this, it would not be a beginning to the number of thy creations. Next we have Enoch's understanding of the fall of Adam, and as recorded in Moses chapter 6, verses 48 and 49, which reads, And as Enoch spake forth the words of God, the people trembled, and could not stand in his presence. And he said unto them, Because that Adam fell, we are, and by his fall came death, and we are made partakers of misery and woe. Behold, Satan hath come among the children of men, and tempteth them to worship him. And men have become carnal, sensual, and devilish, and are shut out from the presence of God. Next we have Enoch's understanding of the atonement, as recorded in Moses chapter 7, verse 47, which reads, And behold, Enoch saw the day of the coming of the Son of Man, even in the flesh, and his soul rejoiced, saying, The righteous is lifted up, and the Lamb is slain from the foundation of the world. And through faith I am in the bosom of the Father, and behold, Zion is with me. Next we have Enoch's understanding of the gospel program, including the first principles and ordinances of the gospel, as recorded in Moses chapter 6, verse 52, which reads, And he also said unto him, If thou wilt turn unto me, and hearken unto my voice, and believe, and repent of all thy transgressions, and be baptized, even in water, in the name of mine only begotten Son, ye shall receive the gift of the Holy Ghost, asking all things in his name, and whatsoever ye shall ask, it shall be given you. Next we have Enoch's understanding of the second coming, as recorded in Moses chapter 7, verses 59 and 65, which read, And Enoch beheld the Son of Man ascend up unto the Father, and he called unto the Lord, saying, Wilt thou not come again upon the earth? And it came to pass that Enoch saw the day of the coming of the Son of Man in the last days, to dwell on the earth in righteousness for the space of 1,000 years. Next we have Enoch's understanding of the resurrection, as recorded in Moses chapter 7, verse 62, which reads, And righteousness will I send down out of heaven, and truth will I send forth out of the earth, to bear testimony of mine only begotten, his resurrection from the dead, yea, and also the resurrection of all men. Next we have Enoch's understanding of the spirit prison, as recorded in Moses chapter 7, verses 55 through 57, which read, And the Lord said unto Enoch, Look, and he looked and beheld the Son of Man lifted up on the cross. And the saints arose, and as many of the spirits as were in prison came forth, and stood on the right hand of God, and the remainder were reserved in chains of darkness until the judgment of the great day. Next we have Enoch's understanding of the millennium, as recorded in Moses chapter 7, verses 64 and 65, which reads, And there shall be mine abode, and it shall be Zion, which shall come forth out of all the creations which I have made. And for the space of 1,000 years the earth shall rest. And it came to pass that Enoch saw the day of the coming of the Son of Man in the last days, to dwell on the earth in righteousness for the space of 1,000 years. And lastly, we have Enoch's understanding of the judgment day, as recorded in Moses chapter 7, verses 55 through 57, which read, "And the Lord said unto Enoch, Look, and he looked and beheld the Son of Man lifted up on the cross. And the saints arose, and as many of the spirits as were in prison came forth, and stood on the right hand of God. And the remainder were reserved in chains of darkness, until the judgment of the great day." Since we are ending on the judgment day, let me share an interesting quote or perspective given to us by the Protestant reformer Martin Luther, which reads, "I have but 2 days in my calendar, today and the day I stand before Christ." Now, if we lived each day with that thought in mind, I wonder how that would affect our thoughts, words, and actions. I imagine we would be a bit more careful how we conducted ourselves day by day. As one final note, notice how the plan of salvation incorporates both gospel themes, such as the creation, fall, and atonement, as well as prophetic themes, such as the second coming, millennium, and judgment day. And so, we see why it is that these ancient preachers of righteousness both spake and prophesied, for it is all part of the plan of salvation and is found in Moses chapter 6, verse 62, which reads, "And now behold, I say unto you, this is the plan of salvation unto all men, through the blood of mine only begotten, who shall come in the meridian of time." In our next episode, episode 26, we will begin with Enoch's overarching timeline, which included Noah's day and the great flood, Christ's day in the meridian of time, and the last days, clear up to the end of the world. We will then dial in on Enoch's prophetic timeline of the last days. We end then with another prophetic timeline alert, reminding everyone that these ancient preachers of righteousness, such as Adam, Enoch, and Noah, both spake and prophesied, incorporating gospel themes with prophetic themes in their teachings, making their teachings far more interesting, relevant, and powerful than any one of these themes by themselves. As stated, our next episode, episode 26, will be part 3 of Enoch's prophetic timeline of the last days, with a subtitle of Tribulations, Tribulations, and More Tribulations. Thank you for watching. Push the like button if you enjoyed this episode, and be sure to push the subscribe button. Until next time, stay vigilant, for ye know neither the day nor the hour of his coming.